The phone buzzed in Delilah Vance's palm, illuminating her tired face as she stood in the middle of JFK Airport's chaotic Terminal 4. 3 flight cancellations, 1 lost bag, and now her best friend wasn't answering calls about their Barcelona trip. Perfect. Without thinking, she typed furiously into the message thread she believed belonged to her travel agent. "Hey, my flight to Barcelona got canceled again. Rebooking for tomorrow at 8 p.m. Can you please make sure the hotel reservation at Hotel Catalonia Plaza is extended? Also, could you recommend some quiet cafes in the Gothic Quarter? Desperately need to work remotely without tourists screaming in my ears. Thanks." She hit send and shoved her phone back into her coat pocket, dragging her carry-on toward the airline help desk. The line stretched nearly to the food court. In his private jet somewhere over the Atlantic, Carson Thorne felt his phone vibrate. The 34-year-old shipping magnate glanced down, surprised to see a text from an unknown number. He rarely gave out his personal cell, a necessary precaution when your net worth hovered around $11 billion. He scanned the message and immediately realized it wasn't meant for him. His thumb hovered over the delete button, but something stopped him: Barcelona. He just closed a major acquisition of Mediterranean shipping routes and purchased a historic building in the Gothic Quarter for his European headquarters. He knew the area intimately. Why not? He murmured to himself before typing back. "Wrong number, but I actually know Barcelona quite well. Hotel Catalonia is excellent. Try requesting room 412 if available, corner room with the best view. For quiet cafes, El Jardin on Cara dels Escudellers is hidden and has reliable Wi-Fi. Good luck with your flight." Delilah's phone buzzed 20 minutes later as she finally reached the front of the customer service line. She glanced down, brow furrowing as she read the response. Wrong number. She checked the contact and realized with mortification that she'd texted a complete stranger instead of her travel agent, Thomas. "I am so sorry," she typed back quickly. "Totally meant to send that to my travel agent. Thank you for the recommendations though, very kind of you." She pocketed her phone again and focused on the airline representative, eventually securing a spot on tomorrow's flight. When she checked her phone later at her airport hotel, she found another message from the mystery number. "No problem. Travel troubles are universal. If you need any other Barcelona recommendations, I'm happy to help. I spend half my life there for work." Delilah hesitated, then decided there was no harm in replying. "That's generous of you. I'll be there for 2 weeks' first-time visit. Any non-tourist trap restaurants worth checking out?" Carson smiled at his phone screen, surprising his executive assistant, who rarely saw such expressions on her boss's typically serious face. Something about helping this stranger felt refreshing. No one asking him for money, no one knowing who he was, just simple human interaction. "Try Cal Pep for seafood, tell them Carlos sent you and they'll give you the local treatment. La Pepita for tapas. Avoid La Rambler restaurants entirely. What brings you to Barcelona? Business or pleasure?" Sitting cross-legged on her hotel bed, Delilah found herself smiling at the easy conversation. "Both, actually. I'm a freelance architectural photographer. Meeting my friend there, but she's handling most of the planning. I'm just trying to find quiet places to edit between shoots." In his jet, Carson felt an unexpected connection forming. Architecture was his secret passion, the reason he'd purchased that Gothic Quarter building when it made little business sense. He rarely shared this interest with anyone. "Architecture, you say? You must visit Casa Batlló at sunset. The light through Gaudi's windows is worth whatever they're charging these days. If you're into photography, I can recommend some hidden viewpoints most tourists miss." Delilah's interest was piqued. "I would appreciate that enormously. Though I'm starting to feel guilty getting free travel advice from a complete stranger. I'm Delilah, by the way." Carson hesitated, then typed, "I'm Carson. And don't worry, giving Barcelona advice actually makes my Tuesday evening more interesting than these contract reviews." Over the next 24 hours, As Delilah prepared for her rescheduled flight, they continued exchanging messages. Carson shared insider tips about Barcelona while carefully omitting details about his wealth or position. He found himself checking his phone more frequently than he had in years, eager for her responses. For Delilah, the mysterious Carson became a welcome distraction from travel stress. His recommendations were detailed and thoughtful, suggesting someone who truly knew the city intimately. By the time she boarded her flight to Barcelona, she felt as if she had a personal guide. "Taking off soon," she texted him. "Thanks again for all the Barcelona wisdom. Maybe I'll send you a photo if I capture any of those spots you recommended." "I'd like that," Carson replied, smiling to himself in his Barcelona penthouse office. He hadn't planned to remain in the city this long, but suddenly found reasons to postpone his departure to London. His assistant had raised eyebrows when he'd cleared his schedule for the next few days, something he never did. When Delilah landed in Barcelona, jet-lagged but excited, she found another message waiting. "Welcome to Barcelona. The weather's perfect today, 22 degrees C and sunny. Try the cafe I mentioned on Cara dels Escudellers if you need to fight the jet lag with excellent coffee." She smiled, oddly touched that this stranger had checked the weather for her arrival. "Thanks. Heading to the hotel first, but coffee is definitely happening after. Still can't believe I accidentally texted a Barcelona expert." After settling into her hotel, where she had indeed requested room 412, as Carson suggested, and was rewarded with a stunning view, Delilah met her friend Maddie for dinner. They caught up over paella at a restaurant Carson had recommended, and Delilah found herself mentioning him repeatedly. "So let me get this straight," Maddie said, refilling their wine glasses. "You've been texting with some random guy who knows Barcelona, and now you're following his recommendations. Should I be concerned?" Delilah laughed. "It sounds weird when you put it that way, but his advice has been spot on so far. This restaurant is amazing, isn't it? And he's not creepy, just helpful." Maddie raised an eyebrow. "And what does Mr. Helpful do for work that he knows Barcelona so well?" "Something with international business, I think. He travels a lot." Delilah realized how little she actually knew about him. "It's just casual texting about the city, Mads. Nothing more." Yet that night, as she stood on her hotel balcony overlooking the city lights, Delilah found herself sending Carson a photo of the view with the message. "Room 412 was a brilliant suggestion. I owe you a coffee for all this advice." Carson looked at the photo from his penthouse just 15 blocks away. He could actually see the Hotel Catalonia from his terrace. The thought that this intriguing woman was so close made him pause. For the first time in years, he considered doing something impulsive. "I'm glad you like it." "About that coffee, I'm actually in Barcelona this week too. If that offer was serious, El Jardin at 2 p.m. tomorrow, no pressure of course." Delilah stared at her phone, heartbeat quickening, meeting a stranger from texts. She typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on. "You know what, why not? El Jardin at 2, how will I recognize you? I'll be in a blue jacket, corner table if available. I'm tall with dark hair, and you?" "I'll be the jet-lagged American with a camera bag and red hair," she replied, surprising herself with her boldness. The next day, Delilah found herself growing nervous as 2 p.m. approached. She'd told Maddie where she was going and promised to text updates, but still felt butterflies as she approached the cafe. What had seemed like a good idea last night now felt reckless in the bright Barcelona afternoon. She spotted him immediately. Tall, dark-haired, blue jacket, but the description hadn't prepared her for how handsome he would be. He sat with casual confidence in the corner, no phone in sight, simply watching the world go by. When their eyes met, his face transformed with a warm smile that reached all the way to his eyes. "Delilah?" he asked, standing as she approached. "Carson," she confirmed, suddenly feeling shy. "I can't believe I'm actually meeting my wrong number Barcelona guide." He pulled out her chair. "I can't believe you actually showed up." Most people would have blocked a random number giving unsolicited travel advice. Your advice was too good to ignore, she laughed, settling into her seat. Though my friend thinks I'm crazy for meeting a stranger from texts, your friend shows good judgment, Carson said with a smile. For all you know, I could be anyone. Their coffee stretched into 3 hours of easy conversation. Carson was careful to talk about his work in shipping only vaguely, focusing instead on their shared love of architecture and travel. Delilah found herself captivated by his knowledge of the city and his thoughtful questions about her photography. I should probably go, she said reluctantly, looking at her watch. I promised Maddie we'd do the Sagrada Familia tour at 6. Carson nodded, equally reluctant to end their time together. Of course. But if you'd like a local perspective on some architecture worth photographing, I could show you around tomorrow. There are some buildings even most locals don't appreciate. I'd like that, Delilah said, meaning it. There was something about Carson that felt trustworthy despite the unusual circumstances of their meeting. As they parted ways outside the cafe, Carson fought the urge to tell her who he really was. But the way she treated him like a normal person, not a billionaire to be impressed or exploited, felt too precious to risk. The next day, they met at a small plaza in the Gothic Quarter. Carson arrived early, instructing his security team to keep a discreet distance, something they protested until he reminded them who signed their paychecks. When Delilah appeared, camera bag over her shoulder and hair catching the sunlight, he felt that unfamiliar flutter in his chest again. Ready for the insider's architectural tour? He asked. Lead the way, she smiled. I brought extra memory cards. Carson took her to hidden courtyards, private buildings with exceptional facades, and eventually to the historic building he'd purchased, though he presented it as a place a friend let me into once. This is extraordinary, Delilah breathed, photographing the intricate ceiling work in the main hall. The restoration work is impeccable. Your friend must be incredibly wealthy. Carson coughed slightly. He does all right. The building's being converted into offices soon, I think. What a shame, she sighed. It should be a museum or something public. Spaces like this shouldn't be hidden away for corporate meetings. Carson studied her passionate expression, making a mental note that perhaps his original plans for the building needed reconsideration. As the week progressed, they fell into a pattern. Mornings, Delilah would explore with Maddie or work on her photography assignments. Afternoons, she'd meet Carson for exploring and dinner. Each day, she found herself more drawn to this mysterious man who seemed to know every hidden corner of Barcelona, yet spoke about himself so sparingly. You know everything about me at this point, she said one evening as they shared tapas at a tiny bar Carson had led her to through what seemed like a maze of narrow streets. But I still know almost nothing about you. It's not fair. Carson looked down at his glass of wine. What do you want to know? Well, for starters, how do you know Barcelona so well? Are you Spanish? American, but I travel here frequently for work. Shipping industry, he said carefully. That explains the language skills, she nodded. But you talk about architecture like someone who studied it. A personal interest, he admitted. I would have studied it in college if my father hadn't insisted on business school. You should have followed your passion, Delilah said, reaching across to touch his hand briefly. Though you seem to do well enough in shipping to afford plenty of Barcelona trips. Carson felt a weight in his chest. The deception was growing uncomfortable. I've been fortunate, he said simply. On her 10th day in Barcelona, Delilah woke to a text from Carson. Free today. There's something special I'd like to show you. Intrigued, she replied. When and where? I'll pick you up at the hotel at noon. Wear comfortable shoes. At precisely noon, Delilah stepped out of the hotel to find not Carson but a sleek black car with a driver holding a sign with her name. Confused, she approached cautiously. Miss Vance, Mr. Thorne sent me to bring you to him. Thorne? She realized she'd never asked Carson's last name. The formality of a car service seemed odd given their casual friendship, but she climbed in, curiosity overcoming caution. The driver took her through the city, eventually winding up steep roads to a hilltop overlooking Barcelona. When they stopped, she saw Carson waiting beside a picnic laid out on a panoramic viewpoint, the entire city spread before them. "What is all this?" she asked, gesturing to the elaborate setup. Carson looked nervous for the first time since she'd met him. "I wanted to thank you properly." "Thank me for what?" "For seeing me," he said simply. "Just me, not." He trailed off. "Let's enjoy the view first, then we need to talk." The picnic was exquisite local cheeses, fresh bread, fruit, and wine from a vineyard she'd never heard of but tasted like liquid gold. As they ate, Carson pointed out landmarks across the cityscape, and Delilah captured the spectacular view with her camera. Finally, as they finished their wine, Carson took a deep breath. "Delilah, I haven't been entirely forthcoming about who I am." She set down her glass, a creeping sensation of unease spreading through her. "What do you mean?" "My full name is Carson Thorne. I own Thorne Global Shipping." Delilah stared at him blankly. "It's one of the largest private shipping companies in the world," he continued awkwardly. "That building I showed you, I own it. This vineyard that made this wine, I own that too. Delilah searched for words. "You're rich." Carson let out a strained laugh. "That's putting it mildly. I'm a billionaire, Delilah." She sat in stunned silence, memories of their time together replaying with this new context. The way staff had treated him at restaurants, the access to private buildings, his extensive knowledge of the city, it all made sense now. "Why didn't you tell me?" she finally asked, voice small. "At first because it didn't matter, you were just a wrong number asking about Barcelona," he explained. "But then we met, and you treated me like a normal person. Do you know how rare that is in my life? Everyone wants something from Carson Thorne, the billionaire. No one just enjoys coffee with me because they like my company." Delilah processed this information slowly, emotions swirling. "So you lied to me, by omission," he conceded. "And I'm sorry for that. But everything else, everything I shared about myself, my interests, my thoughts, that was all real. More real than I've been with anyone in years." She stood up, needing space to think. The view of Barcelona suddenly seemed overwhelming rather than beautiful. "I should go." "Delilah, please." Carson stood too, distress evident in his eyes. "I know this is a lot to take in, but I need time, Carson," she interrupted. "This changes things." "Why?" "Why does it change anything about who I am or how we connect?" "Because you weren't honest with me," she exclaimed. "And because billionaires don't date regular people they meet through wrong number texts. That's not how the world works." "That's exactly my point," he said, stepping closer. "My world doesn't work like normal people's, but these 2 weeks with you have been the most normal, the most real I've felt in years. Please don't walk away from that just because of my bank account." Delilah shook her head. "I need to think." "Can you have your driver take me back to my hotel?" Carson's shoulders slumped, but he nodded. "Of course." That evening, Delilah sat with Maddie in their hotel room, trying to process everything. She'd looked up Carson Thorne online and been overwhelmed by what she found: Forbes articles, business profiles, charity galas, the occasional gossip about dating models or actresses. "So let me get this straight," Maddie said, scrolling through images on her phone. "The guy you've been hanging out with is literally one of the richest men in America, and he didn't tell you. That's the issue. He wasn't honest. Or maybe he just wanted someone to like him for him," Maddie suggested. "I mean, look at these women he's been photographed with. All perfect, all probably after his money. Then there's you, gee, thanks. That's not what I meant, you're gorgeous, Del, but you didn't know who he was. You liked him for his Barcelona tips and architecture talk. Don't you think that might have been refreshing for him?" Delilah flopped back on the bed. "Maybe, but what happens now? I go home to my tiny New York apartment in 4 days and he flies off in his private jet to, I don't know, buy a country or something. Or," Maddie said thoughtfully, "you see where it goes. Like normal people do when they're interested in each other." The next day, Delilah still hadn't responded to Carson's texts. He'd sent 3: an apology, an explanation of why he'd kept his identity secret, and finally, a simple "I miss you." She was photographing Casa Batlló at sunset, just as he'd recommended that first day, when she felt someone watching her. Turning, she saw Carson standing a respectful distance away, hands in his pockets, that same warm smile on his face despite the uncertainty in his eyes. "The light is perfect right now, just like you said," she offered as a greeting. "I'm glad you came to see it," he replied, keeping his distance. "Delilah, why me?" she interrupted. "Out of all the people you could be with, why would you spend 2 weeks showing a random photographer around Barcelona?" Carson took a step closer. "Because you texted the wrong number and made me laugh for the first time in months. Because you see beauty in old buildings that most people would tear down for profit. Because when we talk, I'm not thinking about business or money or obligations, I'm just thinking about how much I want to hear what you'll say next." Delilah felt her resolve weakening. "But we're from different worlds. We're standing in the same world right now," he pointed out. "I have more money than I know what to do with, yes, but that doesn't change who I am inside, what I value, what makes me happy." He paused. "And these past 2 weeks with you have made me happier than I can remember being in years. What happens when I go back to New York, back to deadlines and client meetings and my completely non-billionaire life? I have an apartment in New York," he said with a small smile. "And I happen to know a wonderful architectural photographer who might be interested in documenting some historic buildings I'm preserving." Despite herself, Delilah laughed. "Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a reason to keep seeing me," he corrected. "The job is yours if you want it, regardless. Your work is exceptional. But what I'm really hoping for is a chance to keep getting to know you without the secret between us." She studied his face, searching for any sign of insincerity, but found only openness and a vulnerability she hadn't noticed before. "I'm not interested in your money, you know. That's exactly why I'm interested in you," he replied. "And I still expect you to text me Barcelona recommendations if I need them." His face broke into a full smile. "Any time, wrong number, any time." Delilah closed the distance between them, her camera still in hand. "I should probably take your picture here for documentation purposes." "Documentation of what?" "The moment I decided to give a billionaire shipping magnate a second chance," she said, lifting her camera to her eye. Smile. 6 months later, Delilah sat in Carson's New York penthouse, reviewing photographs she'd taken of his latest preservation project. What had started as a professional relationship documenting his architectural investments had evolved naturally into much more. "These are perfect," Carson said, coming up behind her and resting his hands on her shoulders. "The board is going to love them for the Foundation's annual report." The Carson Thorne Historic Preservation Foundation had been established 3 months earlier, inspired by their conversations in Barcelona. The Gothic quarter building he'd purchased was now being converted into a public museum and architectural education center rather than offices. "I still can't believe all this started with a wrong number," Delilah said, leaning back against him. "Best misdirected text of my life," he agreed, kissing the top of her head. "Though I do feel bad for your actual travel agent. He missed out on giving you some excellent Barcelona advice." Delilah laughed. "Thomas was very jealous when I told him about all your insider tips, even more jealous when I told him you'd named a scholarship program after me." The Delilah Vance Architectural Photography Grant now funded 5 promising young photographers each year to document historic buildings around the world. "Speaking of travel," Carson said, moving to sit beside her on the couch, "I was thinking we might go back to Barcelona next month." "Anniversary trip." "Anniversary of my travel disaster, you mean?" she teased. "Anniversary of the best wrong number I've ever received," he corrected. "Though I had something more specific in mind this time." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Delilah's breath caught as he opened it to reveal a stunning vintage-style ring. "Carson, I know it's fast," he said softly, "but when you know, and I knew from that first coffee in El Jardin that you were different from anyone I'd ever met." You saw me, not my money, not my company, just me. Tears welled in Delilah's eyes as Carson slid off the couch onto one knee. Delilah Vance, would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? I promise to always answer your wrong number texts with helpful advice. Laughing through her tears, Delilah nodded. Yes, yes, I will marry you, Carson Thorne, billionaire, shipping magnate, and exceptional Barcelona tour guide. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Carson's phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it and burst out laughing. What is it? Delilah asked. Someone just texted the wrong number asking for restaurant recommendations in Chicago, he said, showing her the screen. Should I answer it? Absolutely not, she said, pulling him up for a kiss. Some wrong numbers are meant just for us. They spent the evening planning their return to Barcelona, where it all began with a simple misdirected text that had changed both their lives forever. Sometimes, Delilah reflected as she curled against Carson later that night, the best connections come from the most unexpected wrong turns.